Welcome to Redefining Medicine, an intimate and personalized program that illustrates a different side of the practice of medicine. Our in-depth conversations will focus on the physicians and practitioners who are redefining medicine through their integrative, functional, and holistic approach to health and well-being.
Hi, welcome to Redefining Medicine. I'm really honored and beyond excited to interview today Dr. Jeff Bland. I'm sure everybody knows who Jeff Bland is. He is not just the person who started metagenics, he is also the guru of preventive medicine. And Dr. Bland has been with us for a long time, and he has so much to tell us. I mean, 15 minutes is not going to be enough. So Dr. Bland, it's an honor. I'm so happy to be able to talk to you.
Well, thank you. It's my honor. What a privilege to have this conversation. Thanks.
Well, tell us, I mean, how did you even foresee the future the way you did? Because you're a true guru, you're a true visionary.
Well, I think for me, I was just so fortunate that I was kind of guided along my path in meeting some remarkable people who are really in their own rights. Visionaries, creative thinkers, people thinking out of the box, people that are assimilating information in unique ways. And I had a chance to do a lot of travel and educational events all over the world over the course of my life. I've traveled now over 6 million miles. I know I can't even believe it when I say that, but yeah, that's true. And if you think of all those experiences I've had talking with extraordinary visionaries in their own rights, I'm a mosaic. I'm a kind of a compilation and of all those different experiences. So through that, and then probably the most influential was my 2 years I spent on sabbatical. I was a professor for 13 years in med school environments. And when I went on sabbatical with Dr. Linus Pauling at his Institute of Science and Medicine in Palo Alto, that was in the early 80s, 81 to 83, that was a life changer, meeting he and his wife, Eva Helen, having a chance to really understand beyond his brilliance as a scientist of his and his wife's humanism, compassion, understanding for social justice, all sorts of things that I didn't recognize until I'd had a chance to interact with them as to what they stood for in their lives. And it came down to structure and function, that if you really went all the way from subatomic particle physics all the way up to whole organizational structures and societies, it was really just structure and function. And that's what they were advocating, that if you get the structure right, the function will follow. And so when I left in 83, going back to my university professorship, I said, wow, there's something here. If I could only get this across to healthcare practitioners and how that related to things like diet and lifestyle and optimizing genetic expression, we could transform medicine. And so I made the career decision, and when I think back now, it was kind of a silly decision, but it turned out to work out well. I gave up my tenured faculty position, gave up my security professionally, and decided to start a company to teach physicians how to do preventive functional medicine in their practices. So that was in about 1984, 85. That grew up to become then thanks to my wife, who encouraged me to have a meeting with a variety of peace leaders in 1989. We birthed in the concept of functional medicine, and then we founded, again through her advocacy, the Institute of Functional Medicine in 1990, and now history, the last 32 years, we've seen that grow up to be over 100,000 practitioners in the world that have been engaged with this. So it's just been a marvelous kind of ability to watch how things can grow up if you have an idea that people can affiliate with and can put their energy behind and create change.
How did you start? When you started, how did you get people to start hearing you? Because as you know, traditional medicine is still far behind us. And you came out of traditional medicine, as we all did. And how did you start it? What caused you? I understand Linus Pauling actually gave a talk at one of the graduations I went to. And I remember we all started taking vitamin C.
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
It. But then traditional medicine turned on him and said that he wasn't right, although he was right.
Yeah.
So I understand exactly where you come from, but help the new generation, help them understand that it's okay to think differently, that it's okay not to take the party line, that it's okay not to absorb what you've been taught and just regurgitate it. How do you do that?
Well, I think that's a really beautiful statement of, I think, what embodies probably all of my professional life, that if we keep an open mind, if we are able to push out the biases that we were taught and start looking at things with more of the freedom of a child as to see the universe as opportunities. Now that doesn't mean that everything we learn we accept and we necessarily incorporate, but it means that we're receptive to new ideas. It means that we are in exploration, that we're constantly in a discovery mode. And I've been very, very fortunate to be reinforced for that in the people I've met and the way that I've traveled. And as I've started to recognize that if you're open to new ideas and you are not first to say, oh, I don't know about that, so it can't be important, because anything that I know must be important. If I don't know, it's not that important. So if you start saying, oh, gee, I never heard about that before, maybe I should learn more about it. Now suddenly you have a chance to really continually broaden your perspective and your understanding, and you link with people in a different way, because now people that you might have at first said, well, they're saying things I don't really understand, so I don't believe it. You say, now I'd like to learn more from you. Now you form a relationship and you start to build a community. And that's a community of everyone trying to get better, trying to learn how to be more effective and how to manage patients with a better outcome. And the fact that we have so much yet to learn. Yeah, we have a lot of body of information, but look what's happened in the last, say, 10 years. They're saying now that the doubling time of new information in the basis of biosciences and medicine is less than 3 years, which means that, let's say we just stopped reading for 3 years, we would be intellectually dead, because the field would have completely changed. It would have doubled the information in those years. So my belief is, and that's one of the reasons that I like the word function, because well before we get to a state of pathology, our function starts to change. Our physical function, our metabolic function, our cognitive function, our behavioral function, all of those are the early progenitors that will tell us later how we are going to be healthy or sick as we grow older. So if you want to go upstream and really understand the origin of downstream disease, you've got to understand function. And that is, fortunately, now a topic that we're seeing much more well understood as we get new technologies for assessment, new diagnostic tools, new ways of understanding behavior, new kind of understanding of neural connection to the immune system, the gut microbiome. All these things that we started teaching in the 80s are now like, oh, this is all new information. And I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty cool, because we started talking about it in the 80s.
Right. And in medical school, in the traditional sense, they're still teaching it the same way they taught them 50 years ago. So how do you encourage people to understand that, let's say, A4M, Redefining Medicine, which is what we're trying to do, is not that we're trying to recruit people, we're trying to help people understand that there are other options, there are better ways to look at it, and that healthy skepticism is okay, but not the way it's taught today.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. You know, I'm kind of encouraged, and maybe where I am here today, because I've been traveling this path, in the first couple of decades of traveling this path were pretty rugged. There were a lot of potholes, a lot of criticisms, people, you know, taking exception with what we were talking about and calling us wrong. And, you know, you have to kind of be diligent to your process. And because often criticism can be your best tool to guide you in how you're going to be more effective in how you're communicating and how you're teaching. And not everything we say or believe is always right. So you want to be constantly saying, okay, a critic, there may be something in that I need to learn from. So I've tried to do that over the decades. And what has happened, obviously, is that slowly but surely, like water dripping, we have seen the erosion of old models and new models, systems biology, start to become replacing the kind of determinism of disease that I learned, the kind of pathophysiology ICD-9 or ICD-10 model where it's everything is encoded in a disease. Now we're starting to say, no, actually it's more important to understand where it came from than what you call it. And I think that is a huge validation of what we've been trying to talk about for the last, well, in my case, 40 years. So it's hard to even say that. But yeah, I'm pretty encouraged, because even I look at medical schools now, and yes, we're still teaching differential diagnosis and still teaching a disease-centric model, but it's much more couched in systems thinking now than it was before, and that is the way that the transition occurs. It doesn't just happen overnight like bringing the wall down. It happens over, you know, as they say, as Max Planck said when he got his Nobel Prize in quantum chemistry or quantum theory. He was asked, well, how did this happen? Because everyone was pushing back against quantum theory and no one believed it. And he said, well, it happens one funeral at a time.
Right.
You know, so you replace it with new ideas and new people that are more capable of understanding where progress is taking us.
Indeed. So let me bring it down to one question about what's going on here today, about immune resilience. And what do you mean, how it pertains to pediatrics?
Well, thank you. Yeah. My focus, and this may be the focus for the remainder of my professional career because it's so engaging, is to understand how we as human beings interface with our outside world and how we can change our health. What is the way that we can reversibly change things that look like they're going south on us and get back onto a track of good health? And for me, there are only three ways that the body interacts with the outside world 24/7, 365, and that's the surfaces of our mucosal tissues, that would be the lungs and the gut microbiome connection, and the microbiome interface with that, and then the nervous system, and then lastly, the immune system. Those are sampling our environment 365, 24/7. Of those three, by the way, they're all interconnected. The immune system is connected to the nervous system, that's connected to the gut microbiome and the mucosal surfaces. So if you ask what can change most rapidly, and if you do something different, and it's interesting to note that we make about 80,000 new immune cells per second in our body. And so it's a very dynamic system that can get information from how we're living and transition itself into a different structure and function. And so we know that immune systems that are being assailed with toxins and bad experiences and bad diets and time compression and so forth can be rapidly aged. We call that immunosenescence. And that sounds like a one-way street. Oh, that's bad. I don't want my immune system overly aged. That's not a good thing. When we get exposed to something like the SARS-CoV-2, if we don't have a young immune system, we might be in trouble. And so what's the opposite of that? Because we've learned in body's physiology, whenever you have a street going one way, there's another road going the other way. So if you have immunosenescence going on, is there a way to turn the tide back? And that's called immunorejuvenation. And that process has really just been discovered within the last 10 years by immunologists. And so I'm really focusing our attention on how do we activate the immunorejuvenation process to counterbalance the immunosenescence process. And actually that concept starts preconceptional. It starts in utero. It starts in children with a very dynamic immune system in which being imprinted by their experiences in life. And so I'm trying to really, in this pediatric resilience focus, is to recognize that we have the chance to really help kids to be more resilient and more capable of managing the complexity of life. And this affects so many different things. It affects their mood, it affects their brain function, it affects their ability to repair from injury, it affects their ability to prevent unnecessary infections and respiratory disorders and so forth and so on. So this is I think a magic new step forward that we're learning from the science of immunology as to how to implement immunorejuvenation.
I think it's great. I think that, again, you're putting together a 360-degree look at life. And pediatrics and in utero, things actually start and continue. It's a continuum. And I think what you're doing is, yet again, at the cutting edge of the future of medicine and healthcare. And I thank you so much for joining us. And I cannot tell you how I appreciate being able to interview you today.
Oh, it's my great privilege, and I think what you're doing and what we're all collaborating together as I would call it a team or a tribe, whatever metaphor we want to use, can help transform and reduce the burden of unnecessary disease and give people the full expression of joy in their lives, which is really what we're trying to do.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure.